Now you're optimistic about the way that things are going. So I never ever think of it at all. Don't you ever worry when you see what's going down. Well, I'm trying to mind my business, that is no business at all. When it's time to function as a feeling human being, with your bachelor of arts help you get by. Just study further, a few more years or so. I also hope to keep my steady high.
Two voices, one country, one table. Welcome into Ethical Adulthood, a Detroit soundtrack. Today I am talking about Chicago's Dialogue, Part 1. Dialogue was written by Robert Lamb, and on Chicago 5, it's literally staged as a conversation. Terry Kath as the first voice in Part 1, and Peter Cetera as the second voice. Terry's voice is rough, strained, earnest, outraged. How can you not see this? Peter's voice is a calm, controlled tenor, pretty even. He's contained, numb but functional, and choosing not to look. This song hit the world in July 1972. Let me give you a snapshot of what life was like back then. At the time, it must have felt like too much, all at once, with no place to set it down. I was only 7 or 8 years old at the time, but that is when I first heard this record. The United States military was committing atrocities overseas in Southeast Asia. The corrupt government under President Nixon was trying to cheat to stay in power. Terrible racial inequality was in full view, as evidenced by over 100 sailors on the USS Kitty Hawk rioting over race. Anti-war protests were frequent and intense. The administration continued to face criticism for surveillance and dirty tricks aimed at political opponents and anti-war activists, part of the same atmosphere that erupted into Watergate. 2 black students, Leonard Brown and Denver Smith, were shot and killed by a never-identified policeman at Southern University. Indigenous activism, the trail of broken treaties, culminated in the occupation of the Bureau of Indian Affairs in Washington, D.C. A major wildcat strike at Meade in Atlanta, largely by black workers, was explicitly about unsafe conditions and racial discrimination. The country was intensely focused on how government was to protect our air, water, and land from pollution and degradation. Climate change was already being discussed as human-driven. Women could not open a bank account or obtain credit independently, could not get business loans, and many could not obtain a divorce. Women could get fired for getting pregnant. Imagine living there. No wonder people checked out. But look, we do live there. We don't have to imagine it. In fact, the noise is louder now than it was then, because now everyone is wired into the noise all day long. Everybody with a camera has a voice, and we're connected 24/7. So when Terry asks Peter, hey, what's your take on what's happening out there? It's an existential question. People who were paying attention were seriously stressing. The world seemed to be coming apart at the seams, and the people in charge were a big part of the problem. Many formerly head-down, laid-back people were becoming activists about so many topics it actually became an in-joke for publications like Mad Magazine, National Lampoon, and shows like Saturday Night Live. Feminist slogans were everywhere. Save the whales, anti-war initiatives, veterans affairs, the environment, children's rights, women's rights, civil rights, indigenous rights, the veterans addicted to heroin crisis, violent crime, which was increasing in the suburbs and rural areas. We had domestic terrorism. Mental illness was highly stigmatized and poorly managed. There was an energy crisis looming, and there were various economic and labor strains. I could go on. It was exhausting. In that kind of climate, most of us drift into one of two ways of coping. One, get involved, because at least then we can stay oriented, belong to a group, and not feel guilty about doing our part for democracy or not doing our part for democracy. Or two, stop paying attention because we still have to live our lives. The no business at all response is a strategy. The song goes on with Terry asking Peter to tell him how he's managing the stress of all the daily noise. Peter tells him several things he's doing, several strategies. Stay in school for a few more years. Then he actually disagrees that things actually need to change. Isn't everything okay? And when asked about repression, he says his campus is liberal. And about the Vietnam War, he just shrugs his shoulders and says, man, I don't know. When asked about poverty, sickness, and human suffering, Peter says two things. I stay away from the city, and my neighbors are busy, and so am I. We don't have the time to sit around, shoot the breeze about the State of the Union. And you know, Terry thanks him for the chat. He feels better. Peter says, well, if you had my strategies, you wouldn't feel anything. You'd always think that everything is fine. You know, the interesting thing about part one is that there is no argument. There are just two different survival postures. Chicago chose to have Terry relax around Peter's suggestion that if you can't really do much about what's happening, then tending to your small life isn't a bad way to live. Peter may be checked out, but he's not evil. He's boxed in. He's tired. He wants protection from all the noise so he can live his life, go to work, go to school, become somebody. Take care of his relationships. Have some peace in his mind. Terry's voice is strained, upset, and in earnest. He's angry and sad and confused. He has no peace of mind. His mind keeps throwing up problem after problem. It's just too much. Which is why it still lands more than 50 years later. Most of us aren't villains. We're just trying to get through the day without falling apart. Now, this line, no business at all, is the lie we tell so we can keep functioning. Let's be honest. Peter choosing to be numb, it's not simply cowardice or ignorance or even callousness. It's a bargain with reality. If we don't look too closely, we can keep going out to dinner. We can keep going to work. We can keep our mood stable enough to talk to people we love. We can keep the house from falling apart, literally or emotionally. We can keep discomfort and all its repercussions at bay. There's a tenderness hidden in the line, "Well, I try to mind my business." Like someone says, "I'm trying not to drown." But then it adds, "That is no business at all." And that's where the song tightens its grip. Because no business at all isn't self-care. It's abdication. It's the moment we quietly decide, if I don't let it in, I don't have to be changed by it. And the reason that line still bites in 2026 is that we live in an era where checking out has been rebranded as protecting my peace, not doing negativity. Both sides are crazy, and I don't do politics. And sometimes these phrases are genuinely healthy boundaries, and sometimes they're just the modern perfume we spray on moral avoidance. What does it do to a person to live with their eyes half closed? Numbness has a hidden price tag. We lose our sensitivity, not just to headlines, but to each other. We stop being surprised by cruelty. We start calling our own conscience overthinking. We settle for comfort where we could have had integrity. And we sometimes lose entire relationships because we will not face a reality that makes us feel we might be wrong about something we think we are. And the wild thing is, Peter's voice wins a lot of time in real life because it's efficient. It's socially smooth. It doesn't ruin brunch. It's fun, easygoing, and carefree. However, it doesn't build a future anyone would want to live in. Now, here's the part I love the most. Dialogue isn't just two kinds of people. Of course, it's also a metaphor. It's two parts of us. One part is alert, raw, responsive, unable to unsee suffering. The other part is protective and busy and numb by necessity, trying to keep us from collapsing. So the question isn't which one am I? It's what's the right relationship between these two parts? Because if we become only the anxious voice, we can burn out into despair. And if we become only the numb voice, we can sleepwalk into complicity. The grown-up move, the ethical adulthood move, isn't purity, it's integration. Two postures live in us. The only question is, which one gets the mic today? Because caring isn't the same thing as carrying everything. But no business at all is a lie that slowly hollows us out. And Chicago, sweet, nerdy, horn band Chicago, walked right up to that lie and put it on tape in 1972. And because the song is that good, the art they made in their moment of caring is still talking to us. If this song made you think of someone across a divide, Maybe don't begin with persuasion. Begin with curiosity. Thanks for listening. This is Andrea Fiondo. I'll see you next time.